Self-compassion means treating yourself with kindness, love, and concern, especially when you're struggling. When you have high functioning anxiety, it is all too common to have a strong inner critic, that inner voice that puts you down and is harsh and critical towards you. The problem is that this harsh inner critic only makes you feel worse and only makes you feel more anxious. In this episode, I'll share how self-compassion is the antidote to high functioning anxiety and the harsh inner critic that goes along with it. This is episode number 118, Self-Compassion as the Antidote to High-Functioning Anxiety. Welcome to Calmly Coping. My name is Tati Garcia. I'm a licensed therapist and coach specializing in high-functioning anxiety. I help high achievers overcome anxiety, stress, and overwhelm so they can feel calm, balanced, and confident from within. Thank you so much for tuning in. So I want to start off with a quote from Kristin Neff, who is a self-compassion researcher. And she describes this so well, I wanted to pull this into this episode. So she says, quote, "Instead of mercilessly judging and criticizing yourself for various inadequacies or shortcomings, self-compassion means you are kind and understanding when confronted with personal failings. After all, whoever said you were supposed to be perfect? You may try to change in ways that allow you to be more healthy and happy, but this is done because you care about yourself, not because you are worthless or unacceptable as you are. Perhaps most importantly, having compassion for yourself means that you honor and accept your humanness. Things will not always go the way you want them to. You will encounter frustrations, losses will occur, you will make mistakes, bump up against your limitations, fall short of your ideals. This is the human condition, a reality shared by all of us. The more you open your heart to this reality instead of constantly fighting against it, the more you will be able to feel compassion for yourself and all your fellow humans in the experience of life." Unquote. So I will leave a link to Kristin Neff's website in the description for this episode so you can learn more about self-compassion from her, but I think this is so well said. So there are 3 components to self-compassion. So one of those components is mindfulness. And mindfulness is that non-judgmental present moment awareness on purpose. So it's when you're bringing your attention to the present moment without judging your experience. The second component of self-compassion is self-kindness. So it's just the act of being kind to yourself. It's being understanding towards yourself rather than beating yourself up and judging yourself and being hard on yourself. And the last component of self-compassion is common humanity. And so this is recognizing that as humans, we are all imperfect. We are all flawed. We all make mistakes. We all struggle. We all experience hardship. And that's okay. And that's part of being human. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that you're inferior or anything else. It's just part of your common humanity. I love the concept of self-compassion, and I actually took an 8-week mindful self-compassion course back in the winter of 2020, I think, to 2021. It was so powerful and so helpful, and it really helped me to deeply understand self-compassion more wholly. And, a big component of that opposite of self-compassion that most of us contain is the inner critic. So especially with high functioning anxiety, like I mentioned previously, it can be common to have this harsh inner critic. First, before I get into that, I want to talk about my free high functioning anxiety quiz in case you're wondering, well, what is high functioning anxiety? Do I have it? What can I do about this? You can head over and take this quiz for free, and it's going to help you understand whether or not you have high functioning anxiety. And if so, what resources and next steps you can take to help you to start the journey to healing from it and overcoming it. So you can get that by going to hfaquiz.com. So now I want to talk about why is it that with high functioning anxiety, we tend to have such a harsh inner critic. And there are a few reasons that I identify. Again, that inner critic is that inner voice that judges you and criticizes you. It's that voice that says, "What's wrong with you? You're no good, you're so stupid," or any other harsh and critical thing you can think of. I'm sure that you've spoken to yourself in that way. And unfortunately, it can be so much easier to be hard on ourselves than it is to be kind to ourselves. The intention of the inner critic is to help you. So it is to motivate you. It is to be hard on yourself so that you can protect yourself from getting judged by others, or so that you can try and motivate yourself to keep going, doing more. But the problem is that this oftentimes is the opposite of what that inner critic results in. And the thing is with high functioning anxiety, you might have high expectations for yourself. be perfectionistic, want rigidity and control in order to manage the anxiety and uncertainty that come up. Your actions might be guided by fear, avoidance, and keeping yourself safe. You might put a lot of pressure on yourself, and you might derive a lot of your self-worth from busyness, and from accomplishments. And all of these aspects that come with high functioning anxiety are the perfect breeding ground for a harsh inner critic. Because if you think about it, if you have high expectations, it's easy to be hard on yourself and to say that wasn't good enough, or it's never going to be good enough. If you struggle with perfectionism, it's going to be easy to say, again, it wasn't good enough. It's not perfect enough. Or if you struggle with putting a lot of pressure on yourself, it might be easy to be hard on yourself because of that. So there are negative consequences to this harsh inner critic. And some of those consequences can include more anxiety and negativity, focusing on the negative, which then makes it harder to feel motivated and puts you in a place of feeling down and disappointed, rejecting yourself rather than accepting yourself, and decreasing your desire to continue moving forward because you're feeling defeated. One great way to think about this is, how do you feel when somebody is kind and supportive to you versus when somebody is harsh and critical? Which one of those motivates you more? Which one of those makes you want to keep trying? Are you more motivated when somebody is really hard on you and they're like judging you and criticizing you and making you feel like it's never enough? Or are you more motivated when somebody is telling you, you're doing a great job, you got this, keep going, you can do it? And it's not to say that you have to be too nice and to the point where, I think this is a common myth with self-compassion where people think like, oh, well, if I'm too kind, then I'm not going to want to do anything, then I'm just going to be complacent. And that's absolutely not the case. So you can be supportive and still want to reach for your goals and still get things done. So it doesn't have to be an either or situation. Both can coexist. The great thing that I love about self-compassion is that it's really supported by research. And so Kristen Neff and other researchers have done a lot of research to support the benefits of self-compassion. And the thing is that it allows you not just to feel better, but it actually allows you to perform better. Because if you think about it, when you are doing well and when you're able to recognize your strengths and be kind to yourself and support yourself and cheer yourself on, that's going to give you more motivation to keep going. And it's going to give you motivation to continue beyond failure, because you can recognize that you're not a failure just because you failed. You can be kind and supportive rather than demeaning and harsh. So there are a lot of benefits when it comes to self-compassion. And so I want to talk about some actionable and tangible ways that you can start practicing self-compassion as the antidote to high-functioning anxiety. So the first and most simple tip is to treat yourself like you would a friend. So this is a simple way to think about it, because oftentimes it's so much easier to give advice to a friend, to be kind to a friend, than it is to ourselves. And so you can kind of like put yourself in another person's shoes and say, well, if I were speaking to a friend in this situation, what would I say to them? How would I support them? Another way that you can practice self-compassion is to be supportive and accepting of yourself, your mistakes, and your failures, and connect with that common humanity and recognize that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. It doesn't mean that this defines you as a person. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. And you can continue and persist beyond failure, and actually being understanding of that is going to allow you to continue forward rather than staying stuck in that place of despair and helplessness. So another tip, and I kind of touched on this in the last one, is to recognize your common humanity. Recognize that everybody suffers, everybody experiences mistakes, everybody experiences anxiety. Of course, it's going to be to different degrees for different people. Everybody experiences feelings of sadness or shame or whatever other things you might be struggling with. You're not alone in feeling the way that you are, and there's probably somebody else in the world who's feeling the same way as you are. Or, there's other people in the world who have overcome the struggles that you have. And so it's possible to get out of the place where you currently are. And again, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you for feeling this way. My other tip to practice self-compassion is to recognize your inner critic and replace it with self-compassion. So anytime you catch yourself being hard on yourself, don't judge yourself for being hard on yourself, because then you're just adding more being hard on yourself on top of it. But try to be kind and be understanding and be accepting that, all right, I noticed I was being hard on myself. It's not the best. It's okay. How can I speak to myself differently now? And another tip is to let go of perfectionism and self-judgment. Rather than always aiming for perfection and judging yourself when you don't get there, see if you can replace it with that kindness and support towards yourself. If you're interested in diving deeper and getting more support on specific exercises for self-compassion, I have an entire training on this topic in the Calm and Ambitious community, my monthly membership community for high achievers with high functioning anxiety. You can learn more by going to calmandambitious.com or by clicking the link in the description. So your action tip for this episode is to start being kind to yourself and speaking to yourself like you would to a friend. And let's continue the conversation. You can leave me a comment below if you're watching on YouTube, or leave me a comment in my Facebook community, Calmly Coping, which is my free Facebook group for high achievers with high functioning anxiety. You can find it at calmlycoping.com/group. I'd love to hear your thoughts on self-compassion. Do you tend to be hard on yourself? Do you tend to be kind on yourself? And what do you think of the concept of self-compassion? While you wait for next week's episode, I have other episodes about decreasing anxiety, adopting a healthy mindset, and managing your time and energy. So be sure to check out these episodes here. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and until next time, be calm.